This computer. Okay. And you should get this now, preparing Windows. This is to get you to the VMware so you can use Excel. Also, you can use any of the productivity suite. Then, once that's taken, then the next step is going to be, well, you should see all three. You should see them there. Anybody at this point yet? Okay. Now, one thing, you probably will have to come down to the bottom window here in the far left-hand corner, and to get, when you use Access, if you should need to use it, you'll have to come down to that bottom corner, and you'll see Access down there. I've put a shortcut on here. I don't know how many times it just doesn't persist, because once we close it down. So once you're here, okay, you're ready. There's that stupid thing about the printer. Just X that out. And now you're ready, if you haven't, to go on into Canvas. And over in Canvas, you'll see the announcements. And that's where you're going to see the invitations for the class today, and then the class Wednesday, and then virtual office hours on Wednesday. Now, so that you'll have Chrome or Firefox. Chrome, if you're on here, Chrome is going to be your best bet in terms of logging in to Canvas and then joining the meeting. Okay, everybody with me so far? That way you'll have. Now, let me explain again why I'm not casting my device or using this device. This device has no audio capability, and I'm tired of sending help desk requests. And the bottom line is, for you to get in and have software, you have to go into the VMware, and you got to come into Canvas, and once you're in Canvas, you can click on the links to the meetings, and you can see my screen. Anybody got my screen up? You follow me? Now, if the second thing you need to have with you is you need to have your book, okay? If you don't have your book with you, you're kind of lost in the storm, for the simple reason I'm going to make some references here to pages. I'm going to make some references to what we're going to be doing in each one of these exercises when we work with optimization. Now, I posted Sunday, I posted about a 25 or 30-minute video going over those first two cases, the PAR Inc. and the M&D. Now, you'll want to take a look at those, and then if you have any other questions, I'll try to answer them, but I'm not sure what more I could tell you other than I showed you precisely what you needed to do to get to the answer. And I'm just going to say this. Let me diminish my screen down for just a moment, and I'll open up the PAR key. If you went in and made the changes to if you went in, for example, and you made the changes to the production time and all of that, but you didn't run the optimizer, then you had the same, then you still came up with 7668, and you still came up with whatever it was, 250 and 150 bags to make. There's the original. And then I ask you to adjust these. Now, when I give you this type of exercise, here's the reason. I'm going to incorporate some things into it that make it a little bit more real world, and it may not be as pretty as it just looks as the authors put this together here for you. And here we've got the standard times and these packages and all this. But now, if you go up here and you begin to change these operating variables or characteristics, and then you change the time available, okay, you're not going to change, their right-hand, left-hand side will change, but the number of bags and the total profit won't change because you didn't run the optimizer. Now, who's confused? I see some confusion. What's up? Okay, you should have the link there.
Yeah.
make sure you, and the meeting is, I have it in there in the announcement for today. Did you get in? All good? So I apologize about the convoluted nature of this. I've complained and complained and complained. Unfortunately, the VMware, although it's cloud-based, can't be used off campus. What can I say? Many of you have been here for a while with me for the ride. You know how this tends to work. So the workaround is get into VMware, then use Google to come over to Canvas, log into Canvas, then go into the meeting so we can all see on the same screen. Okay? I could record a silent meeting. It wouldn't do too much good. But if you're still looking here at this key unpowering again, if you changed these variables up here, it's going to change the right and left-hand side. However, until you run the optimizer, you're not going to get the result. So you've got to run the optimizer. So I'm going to show you the solution part. Okay. Now I gave you some verbiage here about increase, and here's what we did in this case. And I talked about this in the video, but I'll just want to reinforce it one more time, make sure we're all on the same page. I presented us with a problem, and you're going to run into this a lot when you're at work. Let's take a look, for example, at these operating characteristics for the standard bags. The standard bags, they went up, they increased from 70 to 77 in terms of the cutting and dyeing. That's a 10% increase. The sewing went up from 50.5 to 0.52, which is, I think, a 4% increase. The finishing stayed the same. This is on the standard bags. The inspection packaging went up 40% because it went from 0.10 to 0.14. Now, think with me for a moment. If I've increased the amount of time spent on those operations, will the cost to perform the operations to make the bags go up, down, or stay the same? If I've increased the amount of time for each of the operations, is it going to cost me more to make a bag or less? More. That's one of the reasons why that you see you see the maximum total profit go down, even though you're making more units. And I talked about this in the video. If you think about the total cost equation, okay, remember the variable costs are the costs that increase as I increase production. Okay, so what happened here is when we put in the variables and then we changed the time variables, time available over here, we reduced it by 5. So here's what's happened. Management or somebody or I decided, all right, I need more time for the operating steps in terms of the standard bags. But if you notice, the profitability isn't changed because I haven't raised the price, right? And total profit is the profit's going to be revenue per unit less what? Total cost. With me? That's why this is a little counterintuitive. That's why we have this, so we think through these kinds of dilemmas that we're given. And in this case now we have less time available. So when we run the solver, we end up with kind of a surprise. It's a little counterintuitive till you stop and think your way through that. And that is the bags produced went up and the deluxe went up. To optimize, we made more of the standard bags because that's our higher profit. But at the same time, even though we made more bags, our costs went up, right? So we're almost like a dog trying to chase its tail. And this happens all the time. Where it typically will happen is maybe in terms of an operating situation like this one, or when you have your original costs out here, but somebody decides, let's give discounts, or let's increase the advertising. Then any good you've done here with optimizing, or any good you've done with your figures here, and the work characteristics, because those numbers represent work, what people are doing, the materials they're using, you've blown it. Okay? That's why one of the biggest problems with many businesses, if they make the first 5 years and they survive, then they're in a second phase. And the phase is, how do I handle growth? Okay. And if you don't handle growth well, then you put yourself in a situation where you keep shrinking the contribution margin. The contribution margin is what? On a per unit basis, the revenue per unit less the variable costs, because that's what's left to pay the fixed cost, the cost you have to pay. Follow? So you just become like a dog chasing its tail. You get yourself caught up in a cycle and you keep discounting and discounting and discounting and discounting. And then when you realize you're in trouble, if you raise your price, you've conditioned people, your purchasers, your end users, or whoever, to a particular price scheme or getting discounts, and then it all blows up in your face. So that's what's going on here. Now I'm going to open up I'm going to go to the data tab and look at solver. And here we are. Here's the objective function. So they're in B18. Okay. And then we have the changing variables, and those are the number of bags we're going to make. Follow me? Because we're making a choice of the number of bags. And you say, why aren't the deluxe bags why don't they have a higher profit margin? Okay? Because when you look at it, you see the standard bags are at 10, the deluxe are at 9. Intuitively, you would say, well, because it costs more to make them, and maybe I have a price that's below my competitors, and I'm trying to get market share. Follow me? When you go out to work, if you run your own company, or you run a division of somebody's company, or you run a department, okay, listen carefully to how people budget. Because if they budget on the basis of internal costs, they're not budgeting, they're not pricing correctly. They're setting themselves up for failure. The way you set your price is the pricing of your competitors, the market, what will it absorb. Now, if you're in a situation where you have high price elasticity and there's a high sensitivity to increases in price, best of luck. If you're in a situation where there's low inelasticity, you're in good shape. Here's a good example, low inelasticity, healthcare. If one of you today contracted West Nile disease, how much money will you spend to make sure you survive that? Is 10 grand enough? 50? 100? A million? What would you spend to stay alive? This is the dilemma we face with that industry, because we've come up with all these measures to keep people alive, but it runs into the millions of dollars. It's expensive, and insurance companies will pay it. Doctors will charge, and hospitals will charge what they can get, and they'll pay. And then, of course, the government subsidizes that. Well, that's kind of the lesson we've got here. But if we look here now, we also see that we've got the subject. The constraints are built in. We have two arrays. We have the left-hand side, the right-hand side, in terms of those. And we're running a simplex LP. A simplex LP assumes that costs follow a linear pattern. And we talked about that some. I talked about that some last week. And that's all that we're working with right now, is we're assuming that as one thing goes up, other things go up. As one thing goes down, other things go down. And all of you, when you started your econ classes, I'm sure you were doing nothing but classic linear cases. And if you read the textbook, okay, and you walk through, what the authors will do with each of these cases is they will give you a long, detailed explanation showing you through algebraic means, using linear algebra, where the line is. Okay, here's your graph, and then what they consider the optimal point. And then within that is a feasible region. The answers you can choose, they're feasible, but they're not optimal. Got me? Now, the person who taught this before me wore everybody out doing graph paper and doing linear algebra. I think you're intelligent enough to look at what the authors have done in the book and go, okay, I see it. You're saying, so what we can do is we can end up with suboptimal situations. Yes. And when you go and you look at M&D and you run the solver, you're going to see it's going to say there's no solution here. So you can get, you're in a situation where you're operating at a suboptimal level. And if you go back and look at the review and the video I made for you, you'll see that. That makes sense? Okay. Each time, let me back up for a moment. The student files are really a set of solution files, okay? So what I've done is said, okay, I have the solution files, and then I'm going to tinker with these variables, and let's see what we get. For example, with this one, I said, all right, we're going to change the parameters in terms of these costs for the standard bags. We're going to change the time available, and we're going to see what we got. So we get an optimal figure on the basis of our inputs. Those inputs being, okay, the costs as shown or reflected by the time. You with me so far? Now, you say, well, could I use this tool to do this several times and simulate some type of forecasts or simulate some type of environment? Yes. I could say, okay, let's play like the costs go down for cutting and dyeing go down to 0.63. In other words, a 10% decrease. What does it look like then? The value of this tool is it gives you the opportunity to see those possible outcomes. And that's why the authors say, and they talk about in the book, when we build a model, mathematical model is the most powerful one. Because it starts to give you an idea of a reasonable set of probabilities or a feasible region. Does this make sense? Okay, we're going to move on then. I want to take a look at this case that we're going to have here, and keep that. And we'll go back here for a moment, and we're going to work on this using the sensitivity report. Now, I want to point something out to you over in the student files, and I'll just go over there for a moment. We'll take a look at them. Now, you'll see the Anderson Tech Student Excel. I got it? Those are actually solutions. If I just taught it straight up, I'd just go, okay, here's this case, and best of luck, and give me the solution, okay? Instead, what I prefer is to help you understand how changes in these operating characteristics can impact your operation and let you do it mathematically, but hopefully to get you to say, hey, if I can project where I may be, which is better for me to roll the dice and do a price increase without having simulated potential outcomes or simulate the potential outcomes? Which one's better? Which one would you do? Would you run the simulations or just increase your prices and see what happens? Exactly. That's what the tool's there for, okay? It's there to help you think through what are the possible consequences of our actions. If I raise the price, what might happen? And here's the deal. If you're working in linear terms, which most business operations do, then we're going to look at what they call a nonlinear, then we'll look at what we'll call an evolutionary environment. You can start to work through the probabilities. And you remember back to stat, I know, the mean, and one standard deviation above the mean is 34%. 2 standard deviations above the mean, another 14. And then the 3 standard deviations above the mean, another 2. That's just shorthand. So you got 50% of the normal curve. With me? Does this make, are the memories really sweetly coming back? Probably not. and negative, and it mirrors itself on the negative end. So we know that 68% of all observations, if we have normally distributed data, are falling within -1 and +1 standard deviations. I also want to know about the outliers, if stuff goes really good or stuff goes really bad. Okay, now over here in the Anderson student files, you're going to find the file for chapter 3, and it's called par mod. Okay, I'm just going to open this, and you'll want to download it. Let it open itself up here. And then and what I do is I show it my folder, and then I download the thing to my, I've got plenty of those down there, so we're good. Now, I'm going to open up the zip file. Don't do extract all, or you'll have a desktop full of files. And then we'll go open here, and we'll go down to chapter 3, and you want to use par mod, that file. Okay? I'll open this up. Everybody see that? And you see the Excel files, and there's par mod. That's the one you use for this first case for this week, okay? That's par modified. Now, the authors throughout the textbook are going to show you this thing called Lingo, okay? Or they show you, here's what it looks like in Lingo. Lingo is a nice little optimizing tool that is platform agnostic, and it's a nice little tool. However, for you to be able to use it, you've got to add the lab to this, which is another $175 for the lab. So rather than let you pay another $175, I said, okay, we'll just use the Excel because that's what we've got, and you'll be working with Excel if you're going to be doing this, or maybe some type of optimization client. There's some of them out there. Make sense? Let me say this, and I'm being kind of a student advocate here. If I were you, if you can rent a textbook, I'd rent it. The textbook publishers have become so pecuniary, they often will not provide me with a desk copy. Okay? So if you'd like to buy it for $500, be my guest. I'm going, I ain't buying this for $500 because I know it's about the same textbook that was the 12th edition or whatever. Okay? I just go over to Amazon, rent it there, or I go to Vital Source, which is the vendor that I use for a lot of my textbooks, like for this one. I rented this for, I don't know, anybody remember what you paid for your book? Too much, I know that. I rented this for, I don't think, 6 months or something like that for $120 or something. So, but the publishers won't even give me a digital text. What they will send me is a nasty looking, printed on both sides, thing about this big. I guess I could put it in the ring binder. And I hope you're getting good trade-ins on the textbooks, but I would rent them if I were you. Okay, I've done enough on that song and dance. Let's go back here. So you get that file, the par mod, and you're going to be working with it. Okay? And I'm going to close this off for a minute. And I'll open par mod up. And then I'm going to save it to my desktop. Now let's just take a look at it for a minute. Okay? Now, you want to enable the editing, and you'll want to save it to your desktop. Your PC, and this says copy of par mod, and I'm going to call it like Harmon Keith. Okay? Now, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to have you run, not change any of these variables. I'm going to have you run the optimizer, okay? Then I want you to produce the sensitivity report and the answer report, because what the authors, what we're moving into now is looking at the sensitivity report, what does it look like? What does it tell me? Okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead here for just a moment, and I'm going to click on data, and I'm going to click solver. I'll check everything out. Okay, I'm going to maximize total profit, excuse me. The decision variables are good there. Okay, the array's set up in terms of left hand, right on the constraints, and I'll solve it. Now, it gives me a solution. So there is an optimal point, the best answer or scenario given the data I've inputted. With me so far? Now, here's where this becomes a problem. If you see the reports, I'm going to put control, and I'm going to get the answer, the sensitivity, and the limit reports. Or if I want to, I can just do one of them. And just to kind of keep myself from getting too overwhelmed, I'm just going to do the sensitivity report, and then I'll click OK, and it will show me the report. Okay? Now, the text is going to walk you through that process of what does it tell me. And there are a couple of things there that it's going to show you. And I'm just going to go ahead and open it, run it. I will run the solver again. And I want the sensitivity report. I'll click OK. And then let me scroll myself out. I should have the tab. There it is. There's my sensitivity. I did both of them, so I'll get rid of this one. And I want to delete this. I want to rename it. All right. Delete it. Now, it's going to give us the sensitivity report here. Okay. Now they're going to show us, and it should show us, the allowable increases and decreases that we've got. Now, and if you take a look, let's talk about the answer report for just a moment, okay? If I've got given the variables I have and the final value, okay, that tells me what the profit I'm gonna have in the original and the final, okay? Then it shows us the final and original values for each of those. And there are three types of products produced here in Par Mod. There's the standard, deluxe, lightweight. With me? Okay. And then as you come down, you're going to see the original value, the final value, okay? And they say it's an integer, it's continuous. In other words, it could be 1.1, 1.111, etc. So there's a continuous level there. There's not a discrete cutoff. Then they show us the constraints. Now, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but when we look here at this report, we're going to see that we've got slack variables. That's over on the left-hand side. Anybody want to tell me what they mean by a slack variable? What do you think they're talking about or trying to show us? If I have slack resources, what does that mean?
Resources that you don't need to use them all.
Exactly. You don't need to use all of them. You've got some extra resources. So you want to look for this. Whether I'm running a restaurant, or I'm running a factory, or I'm running an insurance agency, I'm going to have slack resources. That may be money. It may be time. Hopefully it's money, which means I have some financial leverage I can use to get some better operating leverage. But what we're saying here is in the cutting and dyeing, I have 91 extra hours. And so I could take those hours based on the parameters I have here and apply them elsewhere. Does that make sense? And I would want to know that. So when I look at these operations, I'm here in the constraints. When I look at each of these operations, I can say, okay, the cutting and dyeing is a highly efficient operation. And if you think about it for a moment, they're taking pieces of material. They probably have a computer-aided, they probably have a machine that's probably computer-aided that cuts the pieces, and then they dump them in the die. Maybe they dump them in the die and then cut the pieces. I don't know. But they're dealing with just the stuff rolls through in a conveyor probably, and it's cut, or it rolls, or it's dunked into a vat to be dyed, or whatever receptacle they've got, pulled out and then cut. So I've got a slack resource here. If I have a job that comes in, I can allocate, or I know I've got some slack here. The same thing on the sewing hours. Okay? How many of you have ever worked in a factory? Anybody ever been in a factory? Yeah, you've been. What type of factory was it?
It was Encore wire. It was
okay.
Basically just made, like, forget what the numbers, like millions of miles of copper wire and like.
Okay, for like probably for
they had any size gauge, like, you know, telephone wire.
Okay.
To, you know, down to little. They're like, I think they're the set. There's only 2 wire companies left in the country.
Yeah.
And they're the one like they're in UK.
Yeah, so they probably run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week operation. Yeah.
They have 2 shifts.
Okay. Oh, they do. Okay, so they probably do some maintenance and some downtime then on a 3rd shift. That makes sense. But you can see here you've got the second is the sewing. Now the finishing and the inspection and packaging. Boom. I don't have any flex. I don't have any extra time. And notice that the 2 where I don't have a slack resource, it says these are binding. In other words, I'm locked into these processes and how long they take. Does this make sense? Now, and why it didn't populate my sensitivity report, I don't know. But let's take a look at the one in the textbook. And if you guys run into the same kind of problems, I'll know for sure. Now, let's look back up here. And here, and we'll go back over the modules. Okay. And we're working on the sensitivity report, which is over in Appendix 3.1 in the textbook, i.e. pages 149 to 151. Let's take a look at them real quickly. And I'll do a search to the book. I'll do the sensitivity analysis. And we'll jump back over there. And I think I started you at page 159. And it was Appendix 3.1. Now, what we're doing here with the sensitivity analysis is we're trying to say, okay, changes in these variables, which one produces the greatest amount of impact if I change it? And if you took 1123 with me, we learned about sensitivity analysis, that tool in the what if part of Excel. Take us over to page 151, 52. Okay. Now this is from the lingo, but it can help serve our purpose. Now this is using par8, which is not parmod, 2 different files, okay? But the ideas is the same. Let's take a look at this for just a moment. Now I have 2 variables, okay? And and I think these are bags or something that these folks make. I think it's the same one. And notice we've got the current coefficient, the 10 and 9, that's the amount of time, the profit, okay? And then we have an allowable increase of 3.5 and an allowable decrease of 3.7 on the standard bags. You with me? Here's what to think of. Okay, I want to make $10 of profit per standard bag. You with me? I can have a range there, though, of minus 3.5, which would be $6.50, or I could have an upward profit level of $13.70. You follow me? So it's kind of like giving you a range. Does that make sense? Now, if I look at the next, and that's the deluxe bags, I have allowable increase of $5.29 to be between friends, or I can drop it by $2.33. So I have a little more slack in terms of what I can do, or flexibility what I can do with the deluxe bags versus the standard. And what I have to do is take the two and the ranges and add them up, and they're almost alike. Does this make sense? Yes or no? And I'll just annotate this there. I'll drop a little drawing tool, and we'll go through this so I can make absolutely certain that you're on top of this. Now, here's the hard part about all of this. For every company that exists, having the discipline and the brains to use these types of tools and think this way through their operating. It never ceases to amaze me that, you know, companies are just, they do certain things and then they're successful, and then things change and they're no longer successful and they can't change with the times. Every industry goes through that. They all do. Let's look at this for just a minute. Now, I've got this benchmark, for example, right here of 10. Now, if I want to say, okay, how much flexibility have I got in terms of range here, pricing it up or down? I've got basically what? $7.20, right? If I look at the lower limit and the upper limit. Now, which is the larger of those figures? The allowable increase or the decrease? Decrease. So it may be telling me, okay, that I could absorb a profit reduction there. I'm sorry, it's not price, it's the profit per bag. I could absorb a decrease pretty easily. Now, why would I do that? Why would I go ahead and change my price? I'd have to do that and lower the amount of profit I make per bag. Why would I do that? To sell them, yeah. To meet a competitor who has dropped their price. Or I might say, look, I have a choice. I can spend $1 million on advertising, or I'm going to cut my prices for about $800,000, and I'm going to beat my competition down on one of their main items. Now, which would you rather do? Spend $1 million in advertising or the $800,000 in discounts? Which makes more sense to you? Talk to me. Yeah, because instead of throwing your bread to the wind or throwing it on the water, you do what? You discount the product and you go back to your customers and say, hey, we're running a discount. If you do the advertising, you may be hitting people out there that don't care. Does this follow? The people who are really masters at this are the folks who are in the fast food industry. Say that 6 times real quickly. Okay? They're masters at this. If they're all about chicken, they've got every kind of conceivable thing you can do with a chicken, every kind of conceivable. We got chicken sandwich, we got lean, fried, we got a salad, we got chicken tenders, on and on and on and on. They know where they can discount and where they can't. Let's take a look at the deluxe bags. Is there an opportunity presented to me there by that range? Is there an opportunity? I'm seeing some heads. What's the opportunity? I'm looking at product D, the deluxe bags. I'm looking at allowable increase versus allowable decrease. What signal are the data giving me? Exactly. It's screaming at me, actually saying, increase me, dummy. The machine's saying, increase the price. Can you? Well, if you want to hit that optimal level, yes, you can. Now, this is why, if I got some marketers in here, any? All management people. Okay. So we don't have anybody contaminating us, right? We're all managers. Your best friend and sometimes your best enemy will be the marketing manager. Think that through and you'll learn. But think about the fact I can increase this price, okay? I might want to do an alpha beta experiment where I increase the price and just see what I get. Then I'm performing a really rough kind of sensitivity analysis. If I have the price at 10 bucks, and I drop it to 9, okay? And at $10, I sold 500,000 units, and I drop it to 9, and I sell 480,000 units. What should I probably do? Well, if I don't need the 20,000 units, I'd keep my price, right? But I ask myself, is the extra 20,000 worth it? Now, if I drop the price to 9 and I was selling 500,000 units and I go to 800,000 units, I'm dropping that price. And I'm going to hammer my competitor. That's what this will let me do. Okay? And if I can do that and I can hammer them on an item that is their high margin item, it's just like cage fighting. I've got my foot on their throat and I'm just wailing on them. It's war out there, and you have to think in those terms. And these data, these reports, these tools will help you get those insights. So the deluxe bags are just begging to be increased. And some other things I might have to take into account would be like return sales. Is this a one-shot deal with a customer, or is it a return sale? Make sense? Then as we walk through that, they give us the allowable increases and decreases. And I'll throw this jewel in here, and you go, I didn't realize there's that much in here. Oh, yes. And that's what the tool is designed to do, is to help us think through. Then they give us some right-hand side ranges, allowable increases, allowable decreases. And the text will walk you through that process of looking at that in Excel, okay? So you want to look at that sensitivity report, and you really do want to focus in on, now in the text, the authors are going to also use a couple of terms that will confuse you. It's called the dual value. The dual value is very simple. It's like marginal utility. If I have a dual value of $4.30, what that means is for every additional unit I might make or not make, I have on the right-hand side an additional $4.30 of benefit. Got it? It's just marginal utility. That's really all it's looking at. Sometimes they'll use the term shadow pricing but they really mean the same thing. And how many of you had econ? Micro? Macaroni? Anything else? Did you love every minute of it? You didn't get in the morning going, man, I cannot wait. See, I took micro and macro. I thought micro would be real tiny little econ books. And then when I took macro, I thought, this is all about macaroni. Are there any mac and cheese people in here? Or have they brainwashed you into not eating good stuff? The train tables and those people over there at that food thing. Oh, well. Now, again, we're trying to look at where can we go with this. Now, if you look down there on those right-hand side ranges, you see one that's infinity in terms of an increase and the other an allowable decrease. Those two infinities, those are intriguing because those are places where I can possibly increase the units or increase price, i.e. increase the profitability. So that's how we use these and we interpret the reports. Does this make sense? Now, right now, if we stopped right now and I dropped dead, which I know many of you are hoping for, but God will not answer your prayer. You've sinned and you're here to be punished. I'm here part of your punishment. Maybe. Who knows? These tools are so easy to use. And right now, you're about 90% ahead of the people you'll ever work with or for. If you get this and you say, okay, I'm adopting that mentality, because you're always asking yourself, what do I get for the additional unit on a per unit basis? Where do I have slack resources? And what can I do with those slack resources? Can I plug them into something else? Now, one of the things that absolutely amazes me, okay, is we know that if the average person out there working, they have about $25,000 of knowledge in their head when they leave. All industries. They know stuff. And so that's why when they hire a new person, they have to train them. If you're working in a knowledge-intensive industry, the average is about $150,000. So when you're a manager and you say, well, let's get rid of 5 or 10 employees, stop and think about what's going out the door. A lot of your insights, their understanding, their knowledge of how things work, especially marketing. If you're a sales or if you're managing a sales organization, be cautious. Okay. Well, let me stop now because we've gone through a bit. Can I answer a question or two? I have a question. All right. We'll take a look real quickly at the other thing you've got going on. You've got Hewlett, okay? And that's pages 166 through 169. And that's going to be a little bit of a different problem. And this is, I think Hewlett is an investment firm where they have to have a minimum amount of cash on hand to pay out dividends or claims. And so what I ask you to do there is to, increase the price of the bonds. Do 2 scenarios. Use a solver and look at if the bond prices increase 2.5% or if the price of all 3 of them go down 2.5%. So you can use the solver to run 2 different scenarios. Got me? Then you're able to see what's going to happen. And that Hewlett is going to be pages 166, 169, and it's going to be, I think we're still in chapter 3 with that one, Hewlett. Let me check this real quickly. I don't think they're that far out. I know it's in pages 168. Yep, we'll go back here. I'll just climb there. Sometimes this is good and sometimes it's not. And they're an investment firm. Yeah, this is the portfolio. page 169. That's the Janders. What did I tell you we'd find here? 166 to 169. All right, hang on a second. I'm way past. Here we go. There it is. You've got earlier on the screen. You can see there's the time, there's the capital budgeting. They've got it out in terms of the timelines, cash requirements, and then they've got these bonds that's right below them, the years, the YTM form, the rate that they, the price and the rate, and then trying to figure, okay, what's the minimum amount of cash I need to have on hand to pay the dividends, claims, etc. What you'll start to see is that you can use this tool in far more than just manufacturing type of scenarios. You can use it in looking at media buys, building a portfolio. And I do want to make sure that we don't miss this. I'll go back to the mods and then we're done. Okay. I've got several resources for you here in terms of sensitivity analysis, shadow price, which is another term for dual values, okay, that marginal utility, and then some other uses like where we're using shadow pricing in terms of trying to green businesses up, some other applications. And then I have one here. I don't have any finance majors here, do I? Any finance minors? Okay, one. You'll want to pay special attention to the geography of the efficient frontier. The efficient frontier is a feasible region where a portfolio, that's where it performs the best. And when you hit that outer limit, then anything beyond it, you're in the land of Madoff and all those, Enron, all those people. Word of the wise, and I'll shut up and leave you be. If you have an investment portfolio and the return continues to go up in a linear rate year after year after year or month after month, you may want to cash your money out because that rarely, if ever, happens. Although when Abraham Madoff was doing his thing, it's an interesting name, isn't it, Madoff? People would get their portfolio reports, and they'd keep things don't work like that out in the real world. Okay, my friends, thank you so much. And I'll do this on Wednesday. We'll have a virtual session, and we'll go from there. Okay. All right. Anybody have a question? I'm going to close this off. Is it too late to add drop for a fee? Probably not.